Okay, hello everyone. Let me get me up next on the comes, of course, Justin. All right, this is our second take because we had to scrap the first one because weird things happened on the audio side. So let me say it again. It is a dark day in gaming, or dark week in gaming. Still making that bloody mistake. Because this week, Anthem is no longer with us. As of July 20, not 20, July 12th of 2026, Anthem servers have been closed down. You can no longer play Anthem. Sad day indeed. And I know what you're probably sitting there thinking, come on, Nick, this is old news. If you've been following the game industry, then you know that this has been reported on for the last several days in excess by the games industry, because it's a big thing to talk about, honestly. Anthem was running in the background since 2021, even if no one's been playing it since 2021. So, it's unfortunate that the servers are done. What's the point? Well, I thought we'd talk about it more, less in the sense of like, hey, the server shut down, because, yeah, it's a big thing. But let's kind of move over for a second. Talk about kind of the fact of Anthem. Like, there's a lot to talk about in terms of it, because, again, I think there's a good point to make here that this could have been a good game. Now, honestly, I'm not going to sit here and, fair enough, talk about the whole history of Anthem and all that happened, da 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 da. There's actually a great video we got down the discussion by a fellow named Mark Dara, who I believe was on the development team at BioWare at the time this was coming out. I might be wrong there, but he does a whole comprehensive video from like 2021 to 2026, so basically when the server shut down this year, of like, what happened to Anthem and a whole post-mortem. Real big thing. And apparently that's really, really good. So go watch that in the comments, talk about that. And that's going to be covering all of that. Won't be covering, like I said, the whole juicy details in excess, because again, he does it much better than we do. And frankly, we'd be here all day if we were doing that, and we don't do 50-minute content. At least we try not to anymore.
We try.
We try. So instead, like I said, let's talk about Anthem in terms of kind of what became of it. Not a full postmortem, like I said, but kind of like the unfortunate fact of it. Because again, as I led this topic by saying there could have been something here, right? If you're not aware, Anthem came out way back in 2026 to middling reviews. It was BioWare's first ever MMO game. Basically, EA wanted an MMO and forced BioWare to make an MMO that really they were neither confident in making, and frankly, the demo they showed by BioWare's own admission actually was just something they threw in front of the executives as proof of concept, and the executives just kind of took that and showed it out to the public as a finished product, because,
They took it and ran.
pretty much. They took it and ran to the public with it, which they really shouldn't have done that. But again, we're not here to talk about juicy deets. But that ended up kind of being what Anthem was. And at the end of the day, though, regardless of what you think about Anthem in terms of its overall thing, the actual fact is it was a fun game. Like, it was the Iron Man simulator, for Pete's sake. Who doesn't want an Iron Man game?
Yes.
Granted, it didn't have Marvel in it, but, maybe that's better, depending on who you ask. And again, when you compare that to some other games that exist, like, for example, Concord, I know, beating a dead horse here, but Concord, I think, is a perfect example of a game that really exists that nobody really wanted. Like, it was in the hero shooter market, a market that's saturated to hell and back at this point. Everyone looks at Concord and think, who wants this? There's no body, there's no soul, there's no anything to it, really, and it just flopped instantly on arrival. That was Sony's big billion-dollar flop. Million-dollar flop. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a billion-dollar flop, honestly. But it's kind of one of those games that fits into the category of why does this exist? Like, it was never going to work no matter how you sliced it. Maybe Concord could have been a middling success if they'd done better and put more effort into it, but it really just felt like a game that by and large shouldn't exist from conceptual. Like, how did this get past the conceptual phase? Now, you compare that to something like Anthem, and like I said, the big tragedy here is that this could have been something. There was a good base here. Like, the games industry is filled with stories of games that release to terrible reviews or terrible performance or whatever, and they get taken and worked on in the background, or in the case of Final Fantasy Online, I say online because frankly I cannot be bothered to remember what name or what number it is at this point. There are too many bloody Final Fantasies to keep track of at this point. I think it's like
don't know
FF.
where they are.
Honestly, I think it's like FF 14, 15. I don't know. There's like 20 plus FFs at this point. Forgive me if I don't remember them all. But that game released, it was, best I remember, horrid. And they took it, went back with it, and they pretty much completely soft launched the thing. I think it was like Final Fantasy New World or something like that. Great game now. It's a very good game by all accounts. It's still got the subscription-based model to it, which is a pretty big antiquated method of, subscription-based or, money production. But overall, everyone that I hear plays it says that it's a really good game as far as like MMOs are concerned. Like, if you had to make a tier list of old MMOs, it'd be like WoW, Final Fantasy Online, stuff like that. Because again, it's still going strong, like almost a decade later. Which, in this space, a game that going strong plus a decade later is a rarity. And again, it's one of those examples of games that had a good concept. There were bones there, like against No Man's Sky. There was a good idea there, but
There
because
was
one reason or
content
another, it just
that would have been very enjoyable for people. It's just
didn't
things
work out well.
happened.
Yeah, things happen. Maybe the production didn't go so well. Maybe outside sources happened. Maybe it just didn't release in the state everyone wanted it to be. Whatever. The point is, it was a good idea that just didn't get executed well. And Anthem fits very squarely in that category. And that's kind of the end thing there, where you sit there and go, well, games that fit into that category, they're salvageable. You know, you can take that back, salvage it, and put it out. And the thing about Anthem is there was plans for a salvage operation. There was plans for a new world situation. Anthem Next, which is what it was called at the time, was revealed, I think, like a few months to a year after the game's terrible release. And it was basically going to be the Final Fantasy New World treatment. They were going to take it, rework it, and put it out bigger, better, and shinier than ever. It was going to be a whole rebirth of the game. Perfect idea, right? Well, not so great, because in the end, like a few months after that got reportedly revealed, EA canned it. And a few months after that, not even a month, the game director, who was a longtime vet of BioWare himself, I think like a decades-long veteran, he left. So, what did that tell you?
Kaput.
So, that's kind of the state that Anthem was in for the last 4 or 5 years at this point. Just kind of a walking corpse of a game, a zombie game, effectively, dead in pretty much all but name. EA had effectively abandoned it and forced BioWare to shift gears entirely to Veilguard. Probably because they were hoping to get a reinvestment on their funds. As for why they left, Anthem so long, because, frankly speaking, it doesn't feel like something EA would do to leave a game in that state for so long, or you shouldn't probably leave a game in that state for so long. Especially considering there was no community support. Like, it's not like, it isn't like, this might piss off Justin, but I don't give a shit. It isn't like TF2, where, let's be honest, Valve doesn't give a shit that it exists at this point, but hey, the community does, and that keeps the game going. So,
and I mean, that's the important part with a lot of games in general, is the fact that you have a community that's going and supporting it. And there's so many examples of games, the franchises, sections of the internet that only really exist in small niches or sizable niches because of the people who still support it.
Now that's the thing, right? Like, again, in the case of TF2, it's dead in the eyes of Valve, but the community keeps it going because they like the game. And fair enough, true, there's stuff to like in that game. And that has kept the game alive all these years. Anthem really didn't have any of that opportunity because it was mostly primarily a console game. It was on EA Play, I think, on PC, but I don't really think so. I don't think it ever had a PC launch, but correct me if I'm wrong if it didn't. But all in all, it was entirely PC, or not PC, it was entirely console-based, with EA pretty much holding the keys to all of it. There was no creator content that you could put in there. It was kind of like Destiny in that regard, where pretty much the controller is the entire developer, which in this case was BioWare-EA, so you can't really add anything to it beyond what it has. But at the end of the day, it was a decent concept in and of itself, but you just couldn't add anything to it. And so there was a community, but it was a small community.
Yep.
And ultimately, like I said, EA probably kept the thing going for as long as it did, purely to try to recoup the losses, honestly. EA probably kept the thing going for as long as it did, purely to try and milk as much money as they can out of that corpse of a game, honestly. That's the entire reason they kept it going. Because it doesn't feel like EA wanted a salvage operation. Because again, if EA wanted a salvage operation, they wouldn't have scrapped the next project.
They wouldn't.
Let alone so soon after its release. Because after the next project got moved, which, on the topic of next MMOs, weirdly enough, I say this, I don't have any links for it right at the moment. Maybe I'll have it in the video after the fact. But as of saying this, I don't have any links in the video. But that just reminds me, remember how I said that after the next project got canceled? Well, I didn't say it, but after like a month or two after the next project got revealed, EA canceled it? Well, fun fact, EA removed all the people from BioWare onto Veilguard that were going to work on Next, as well as, just the rest of BioWare in general. Fun fact about Veilguard, originally, it was also going to be an MMO. which I really don't think they learned their lesson at this point. EA was desperately chasing that MMO money. It sounded like, again, they tried to make Anthem, which was a whole new concept for BioWare. They're like, hey, make us an MMO game. And they came up with Anthem, whole new IP, got crashed and burned. And instead of salvaging a good idea and possibly getting the MMO money they wanted, they like, yeah, no, fuck the MMO. I probably demonetized us by saying that, but
Oh,
whatever. We're not important enough to be demonetized anyway. They said, you know what? Instead, go back to Dragon Age and make a Dragon Age MMO. Yeah, that's an IP that'll people will sell. That'll sell. And it almost makes me feel like the reason that Anthem failed was entirely not what BioWare, or not even BioWare, what EA thinks it failed. Like, it failed because it was a poorly designed game, not because of the IP. But I'm wagering nickels to dimes that the reason EA at least thinks Anthem failed because it wasn't a good IP. Why do I say that? Because, like I said, Veilguard was also supposed to be a multiplayer game that at the last minute, I say last minute, it was like a year or two before it released, they completely changed it and removed every MMO mechanic or changed the formula so it was actually a single player game instead of a multiplayer game, which is why if you go to Veilguard and play Veilguard, which I have, you can actually see mechanics that feel very much like what a multiplayer MMO would have. Because again, not everything from that old MMO concept was removed, but we're not here to talk about Veilguard. There's a lot to talk about there. We're here to talk about Anthem. Anthem is, like I said, a tragedy. Because at the end of the day, there are tons of examples of games that could have worked. Like I said, Skyfall. Now I can't think of the name for some bloody reason. I want to say Skyrim. I don't know why. Hold on, processing. Looking up on Steam. No Man's Sky. That's it. No Man's Sky was supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. Crashed and burned. What did Hello Games do? They took it. They went back. And I think it was Hello Games. They took it. They went back and they basically redid it all from pretty much. They put in the features that they said they were. They did all the stuff that they were gonna do. And ended up making it a really good game. Nowadays, everyone likes that game. It's a really good game. It sells really well these days. Like I said, we already covered the Final Fantasy thing, where Final Fantasy Online came out, crashed and burned. They came back, re-released the whole game effectively with New World, and now it's considered one of the best MMOs on the market. Destiny, for pity's sake. We haven't brought that up, which is weird because when this came out, or before it came out, was crowned as the Destiny killer, which is ironic in retrospect because after a decade of constantly saying what's going to be the Destiny killer, the thing that killed Destiny was Destiny, but, I ain't here to talk about that.
We're not
I'm
here
not
for
so.
that. We're not here for that.
And in fairness, I don't think Destiny is dead, just in a really bad spot at the moment. But again, self-inflicted. Moving on back to Anthem, though. Destiny is an well, moving back to Destiny in regards to Anthem, Destiny is an interesting story because, again, Destiny, when it first came out, if you don't remember, a decade ago, was in a same spot. It was a game that, yeah, was nowhere near the terrible position that Anthem was when it released. Like, it wasn't so terrible, but it was heralded for having a shallow story, for not really having much in the way of stuff to do. Like, it was not a great game when it first came out. It was weird and strange, and yeah, it could have gone the way Anthem did, where it was just abandoned by Bungie to move on to some other project. Granted, it would have tanked their reputation and probably killed them as a studio. Which, again, I feel like I should make a comment to more modern times, but I will restrain myself and not do that. But ultimately, they could have. They could have just left it, abandoned it, and moved on. But they didn't. They clamped down. They did things with Destiny. They ended up putting out the Taken King and, I want to say Forsaken, but that's D2. But they put out things like the Taken King and Rise of Iron, and they built that franchise into a juggernaut. They then proceeded to dismantle that juggernaut in later years, but again, that's neither here nor there. The point is that, there are cases of games that are good concepts being salvaged. And again, that's one of the reasons Destiny, even in its terrible state, still maintains a player base. Not great player base, but a decent player base. And there's hope for that game still. Because again, ask anyone who plays Destiny, and a lot of people will say the one reason Destiny never truly died, and still hasn't ever truly died, is because nothing really feels like Destiny. And Anthem had that sauce. Nothing feels felt, I guess, at this point, like Anthem. You know, name another game that's basically an Iron Man simulator. I'll wait. You won't find anything. And that's, I think, what is truly the tragedy of Anthem. Like I said, it could have been great. It could have been the MMO Iron Man simulator that everyone would have hoped for, or everyone would have loved. But EA chose short-term gains over long-term vision. Ironic, really, because like I said, they hoped desperately for an MMO. They could have salvaged this into a great idea. They could have pulled a Bungie and made a Destiny. They could have pulled a Destiny. But instead, they chased the money and decided, you know what, screw it. Just go make Veilguard and we'll make that an MMO and that'll do better. Which is ironic because they even moved away from that idea and Veilguard still came out with questionable reviews even after the fact. Can you imagine what happened if it would have become an MMO like they hoped it would be? Ugh, that would have killed the. That might have just killed the whole franchise. Granted, you could say Veilguard may have also killed the franchise, but I don't think it was that bad. It was questionable, but not that bad. But anyways, so that's where we kind of are with Veilguard, or not Veilguard, where we are with Anthem. Actually, no. One other thing I should mention. I mentioned earlier in the show that there was a fella named Mark Dara who apparently, I say apparently because I haven't seen his video, but I believe he, like I said, worked at BioWare during this time and did a post-mortem and everything, or at least is well informed about the inner workings of BioWare. According to him, in the code of Anthem, or at least in the code of BioWare, back when the game was being created, there was actually code in the back for private servers and private hosting and stuff like that. Now, granted he also admits that this was taken out about a month before the game released, but BioWare likely still has that code on their backlog of how to make a privately hosted Anthem possible. What I'm getting at here is that while EA may be officially done with Anthem and moved away from the project, Anthem may be gone, but it doesn't have to stay gone. Like I said, the fact that people are rushing to try and make it private hosted, it shows there's still life in this thing yet, even if it's only in the niche, private hosted community. So, I don't know what to say here, really. Like, it's ironic, like I said. There was a good idea here that EA, through their typical EA mismanagement, just turned from gold to lead, which, I mean, there's a reason that EA has the dreadful moniker of scoop up and screw up. They seem to be able to turn anything they touch into lead. And in fairness, the only things they haven't managed to turn into lead is EA Sports, which comprises FIFA and NHL, maybe a few other sports games that I can't think of. And in fairness,
let's be honest here. If they mess up there, then they're in big trouble. Just gonna say that now.
I have long said on this show, and I will hold to this, that I swear upon all my money that if FIFA were to ever go broke, or if they ever were to lose the FIFA license, I wager you, I bet you, all the money in the world, and you can quote me on this, and they'd be bankrupt within a week. Because, let's be honest, that's the only thing that makes them money at this point, and I think we even have numbers to prove that. So, I don't know what to tell you, honestly. The only thing they haven't managed to screw up is the NHL and FIFA series, which I hate to say it, but let's be honest, the only thing they really change on that is the models and the names for like the players every year, because players rotate in and out of the what do you call it? I want to
from the rotations of the rosters and stuff. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, from like the in-world rosters, because again, teams switch and yada yada yada. So players come and go, and they just update the models and the names, and that's pretty much it, really. As far as I'm aware, the FIFA and NHL, I'm probably willing to bet in general, haven't changed much in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Which, hey, say what you will about racing games, at least they're trying to push for hyper-realism as the years go on. So at least they have a selling point. As best I'm aware, FIFA isn't even trying to go for that angle, so... The only thing they can screw up is the thing they literally do not touch, which, ironically, is also a running trend, because, going over to Star Wars for a second, they had the Star Wars license for, I think, close to 10 years, correct me if I'm wrong, and they only pushed out, like, 2 or 3 games in that time.
They didn't push out much.
Yeah, they didn't push out much, which was a massive squandering on one hand, but more importantly, the only thing that successfully came out of EA of the Star Wars brand was the Star Wars Survivor Dash Fallen Order franchise, the Jedi franchise. I don't know. Not sure how you'd call it. Weird naming. But the only thing that came out good out of them was that. And by Respawn, the developer's own admission, the only reason that game came out in the state it did was because it was so late in development by the time that EA got their hands on it that they couldn't do anything to it. And so it was released as is. In other words, the only good thing that came out of EA was the thing that EA had no say over. Which, if that's not something that tells you anything, I don't know what will. But yeah, that's kind of where we are with Anthem. Like I said, we're not going to do a full post-mortem because that would take a long time, and we're already like 20 minutes in, so let's just call it here. Like I said, it's unfortunate all the stuff that came out of Anthem or could have come out of Anthem and just didn't. Yeah, I know, BioWare isn't exactly known for their multiplayer games, especially now, not after Anthem, but the sad truth is there was a good idea here, and fans are
Hmm.
still trying to post it privately even now, which shows that there are people who are still willing to believe in the dream, which, for Lord's sake, that's much more than Concord ever bloody had. What does that tell you? This
There
could
are
have worked.
people super interested in it, and if only they had what they were given.
If only they had what they were promised, honestly. Well, if only they were allowed to have what they were promised.
Hmm.
There was something good here. There could have been something good here, and who knows? Maybe there is eventually going to be something good here. And I know that's a weird note to add to all of this, but hey, it wouldn't be the first time dead games have come out and resurfaced under new developers or new ideas or whatever. Who knows? Yeah, MMOs aren't exactly as easy to remake or redevelop or whatever than, multiplayer games. It takes way more investment in the short and long term to produce, but, stranger things have happened in this industry, so who knows? Maybe BioWare will get their freedom one day and come back to it, or maybe someone will get the rights and remake it under their own banner. Who knows? Hey, maybe someone will make a game similar to it and we'll all finally get the Anthem we hoped for. Who knows? But yeah, rest in peace, Anthem. You didn't deserve the fate you got, which is weird in this industry because usually when games crash and burn, we're not surprised. This is one of
No.
those few games that genuinely didn't deserve the fate that it ended up getting. But yeah, that's kind of Anthem's history in a nutshell. Kind of a depressing point to end off of, but there's really not much to happiness to get out of this. Maybe the fact that, who knows, maybe it'll come back one day. Like I said, that private server thing is still an up in the air thing. You never know. Like I said, BioWare may or may not have that code still in the backlog, so who knows? Maybe Anthem private servers will come around one day.
Maybe.
Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. Maybe that code will mysteriously leak online. It wouldn't be the first time.
No, they wouldn't.
So yeah, that's the show. Hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all found it informative. And we'll see you all next week for, I don't know, maybe we do. I genuinely have no idea what we do from week to week. I genuinely figure this stuff out week to week. I have no pre-planned schedule. It's one of the advantages of this show where, all of it is off the cuff. There is no script here. There is no pre-planning here. It's all just flowing, free flowing.
Until
So
it's
yeah,
not. Until it's
until it's until it's well, that's depressing. No faith in the edit. No faith in the R&D department. It seems good to know our editor has zero faith in their R&D department.
Hey! I'm just looking at this from the news perspective. Sometimes news comes, sometimes news goes.
I mean, there are weeks and it's dry. That's true. That's true. We got to have maybe a backlog of ideas. That's not your problem as an audience.
No.
Anyways, hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all have a good one, and we'll see y'all next week. Good night, everybody.
Have a good one.